I want to talk about this video right here. It is the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight breakdown analysis on BT Sports YouTube channel. You got Richie Woodall and Jamie Moore breaking down the styles, breaking down the attributes, and giving their opinion on what tactics both fighters will employ. Jamie Moore seems to believe that, or at least suspects, that Tyson Fury may box predominantly out of the southpaw stance in this fight because he thinks that'll be more effective against Wilder. Whereas Richie Woodall thinks he's just going to switch throughout. Actually, Jamie Moore did say that Tyson Fury will switch, but predominantly southpaw. And Richie Woodall isn't sure what stance he's going to box out of predominantly, but thinks he'll switch. Now, I think it depends what kind of fight it is. If Tyson Fury is dominating the fight and he feels safe and comfortable, then I think he'll stay in one stance. He knows Deontay Wilder has got knockout power for the entire 12 rounds. So if he's comfortably outboxing him, I don't think he's going to give him any extra chances by constantly switching. He may switch here and there, but I think for the most part, like he did against Klitschko, he'll stay in one stance. Against Klitschko, he switched for a few seconds here and there, but boxed 95% of the fight as an orthodox. Because, again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Why give the other guy a chance that he didn't have before? So, yeah, whatever stance is working for him, I think Tyson Fury will stick to it for most of the fight. If things are not going right for him, then I think we're going to see him switch. And you often see that with fighters. They'll come out, fighters who switch a lot, they'll come out a particular stance, something will go wrong, they'll switch to the other stance and see if this works better, and then they'll stick with that. We've seen Terence Crawford do that, particularly earlier on in his career, several times. So, yeah, we saw Danny Jacobs do it to good effect against Gennady Golovkin, switching to southpaw and having a lot of success out of the southpaw stance. So yeah, it will depend on how successful Tyson Fury is. Now, they're talking about how when you're a southpaw, it's more difficult for the orthodox fighter to land their right hand on you because their right hand has to travel a further distance than they're used to. When you're fighting an orthodox guy, his head is closer to you than when you're fighting a southpaw. It's a few inches further away, so your right hand has to cross this no man's land, and when your right hand is also crossing that no man's land, you're leaving yourself open to the southpaw left, you see. And also, one thing it didn't talk about is when southpaws and orthodox fight, the orthodox fighters usually don't throw that many jabs because the jabbing hands are clashing. The right hand jab of the southpaw is clashing with the left hand jab of the orthodox. Now the southpaw is used to this dynamic. He's used to this angle. The orthodox is not. So often with southpaw and orthodox fights, you'll find the orthodox fighters' jab output goes way down and they concentrate primarily on throwing straight right hands. This has definitely been the case with Deontay Wilder. When he fought Spilka, hardly any jabs. When he fought Luis Ortiz, hardly any jabs. Just waiting around looking for an opportunity to land a big right hand, waiting for Luis Ortiz to overcommit, make any kind of mistake, catch him off guard, etc. And, as I say, I think Fury, he can switch, but if he elects to fight out of the southpaw stance, I personally don't think he's got enough power on the left hand to keep Deontay Wilder honest for too long. I don't think so. I think his right hand, Tyson Fury, is a lot more powerful than his left. Yeah, he threw some nice little left uppercuts and straight lefts against Chisora, but there was nothing serious on him. He's a very big man at the end of the day, and, it's going to hurt the average Joe off the street. But a professional boxer, a professional heavyweight boxer at world level, I don't think they'll be afraid of Tyson Fury's left hand. And there has to be some kind of fear factor there when you're dealing with a puncher who not only hits as hard as Deontay Wilder, but has that kind of energy and spirit There has to be some kind of deterrent, and I don't think Tyson Fury's left hand's enough of a deterrent. But we'll see. I think if Tyson Fury's boxing out of a southpaw, Deontay Wilder, at some stage, particularly if he's getting outboxed, he's going to realize there's not that much on that left hand. I'm going to take some chances. I'm going to start letting the big right hand go to the chest, to the head, so on and so forth. Out of the orthodox stance, even though Tyson Fury fights with his left hand low and sometimes invites a big right hand over the top, his right hand, I think, will be more of a deterrent from the orthodox stance. So there are all those things to weigh up and consider. Now, one thing Richie Woodall also talks about when he's breaking down the fighters' styles and what have you, techniques, is he talks about Deontay Wilder's stance being too wide. Now, this is something which, for some curious reason, a lot of people in Britain seem to obsess over, is having a stance that is too wide. I've spoken about wide stances before in previous videos over the years, and I've explained the function of a wide stance and why some fighters use a wide stance and how they gain from the wide stance. Now, Richie Woodall's critique of this stance is that it puts your right hand further away from the target if you've got a wide stance. It puts and what he doesn't mention though is it also puts your head further away from the opponent. So yes, your right hand is further away, but so is your head. So you just as, because Richie Woodall's saying that Wilder's right hand is falling short because his stance is too wide. But at the same time, Ortiz's shots, a lot of them were falling short because Wilder's got this wide stance so he can lean out of range using this wide stance. You understand? But it doesn't show it accurately here. Well, it shows it accurately, but it doesn't show the full story here, because when you got a wide stance, usually your foot is out here and you're not leaning over your front foot like he appears to be a little bit here. You're more centered, so your head should be about here in the center of your stance, and your opponent's foot is going to clash with your foot a lot earlier when you're in a wide stance, so it's more difficult for them to get to you. And this is one of the reasons that people fight out of a wide stance, to try and maintain distance. If you're a big tall guy and your feet are close together, your head is up in the air here, you can't sway out of the way of punches as effectively, particularly not maintaining your balance at the same time. You can sway out of the way of shots, particularly if you're a power puncher like Wilder. You're not a Malinaji who's trying to throw shots and then skip out of the way. You're someone who's trying to do damage. If you're trying to do damage, a wide stance is good. Because, again, particularly for some types of fighter, Deontay Wilder is a tall fighter with very long arms and long legs. And one of the reasons that fighters like him adopt a wide stance is to maintain their balance, as well as being able to sway out of the way of punches while staying on balance. And it also allows you to get a lot of leverage in your punches. If it doesn't, how come Deontay Wilder hits so hard? I'm telling you, so many fighters over the years, from Floyd Mayweather to Tommy Hearns and many other fighters who I've highlighted in previous videos, often adopt a very wide stance. I can show you pictures of Mayweather where his feet are a massive distance apart. And this is someone who's a defensive genius. Okay? This is something, when I was boxing, I experimented with different stances. And if you've got very long arms like Wilder does, sometimes, and particularly if you're a power puncher who's looking to load up with shots, sometimes when your arms are so long, you can fall off balance more easily than somebody with shorter arms. Does that make sense? It's like, how can I explain it? If you are standing and you're holding, let's say, a broomstick, a very long broomstick, and on each end of the broomstick you've got a heavy weight. Yeah? Are you going to walk around or try to maintain your balance with your feet together, or are you going to have your feet apart? You're going to have your feet apart. You're going to have your stance wide. You've got a more solid base, a better balance. It's distributing the weight over a wider area, which helps you maintain your balance. This is what you're going to do. And this is the principle, particularly for a puncher like Wilder, of the wide stance, because he's got these very long arms and he needs to widen his stance to be able to balance himself. Now, people are going to say Wilder's balance is not good anyway. Well, his balance would be even worse if he was to have a narrow stance. I'm telling you, that's the kind of physiology that Wilder has. I know Fury's a very tall man as well with long arms himself, but he's more naturally coordinated. For someone like Wilder, it's better for him to have a wide stance. And as far as him falling short with the right hand because of this wide stance, that's not the reason he's falling short. He's falling short with the right hand because he's not moving his feet in first. Just because you've got a wide stance, it doesn't mean you can't shuffle in. You can. You can maintain the wide stance and shuffle in at the same time to land your right hand. Wilder clearly doesn't have that skill down pat, but plenty of other fighters who fight out of a wide stance do and did. You look at Tommy Hearns in his prime, light middleweight. Go watch him against Roberto Duran. Look how wide his stance is. Very wide. Go watch him against Dennis Andrews. Go look at how wide his stance is when he's landing the big right hands on Dennis Andrews. Very wide stance, landing big right hands. Because that's how he finds his best balance. With those ridiculously long arms, to be able to generate the leverage and also sway out of the way of punches and keep the other guy, the shorter guy, with the shorter arms at distance from a wide stance. People are going to talk about Anthony Joshua and Klitschko. Joshua and Klitschko are a different body type. They're not gangly like Wilder. Wilder's a gangly guy. You know, their shoulder to arm ratio is probably different. They probably got wider shoulders, slightly shorter arms. Probably got slightly shorter legs. Wilder with a very short torso, long legs, long arms, etc. It's all about body mechanics. But I'm telling you, some people, due to their body mechanics, it's better for them to have a wide stance, particularly if they're punchers. If they're looking to counter and, you know, get these big shots off, it's better for them to have a wide stance. And again, you go look at Mayweather. How many times this guy, you find pictures of him with a crazy wide stance. Richie Woodall clearly doesn't understand the function of it. Don't get it twisted. A wide stance is not for everybody. There is no one-size-fits-all method in boxing that should be used for everyone. No, there isn't. But for some fighters, a wide stance is effective. I'm telling you this. I've personally used it myself, as well as other stances, and I've understood what benefit I get from having the stance this wide, what benefit I get from having a stance a bit closer. And it all depends on, you know, it all depended on who I was fighting or who I was sparring. If I was sparring somebody much taller than me, and I wanted to get close to them, I wouldn't usually fight with such a wide stance. But if I was fighting someone shorter or someone a lot slower than me, they might not be shorter, they might be a bit taller, but just very slow, I would often adopt a wide stance. And I'd be able to get off big right hands, you know, David Haye type style, big right hands, get out of the way, slip and slide, hitting with jabs here and there. You know, so, and again, it all depends on your body type, it all depends on your body mechanics. People are built differently. And they're going to have a style. A lot of people, the most effective fighters, are going to have a style which is based around their natural body mechanics. This is why, as I keep saying, there is no one-size-fits-all style. There is no one-size-fits-all technique. You have to find what works for you. The wide stance works for Wilder. All I would say is, he needs to learn how to shuffle his feet in more effectively before he lets the right hand go, if he's throwing it as a lead punch, particularly. Yeah, because the example they show, he doesn't shuffle in. He keeps his feet stationary, and then he lets the right hand go. Don't do that. Push off a little, just a couple inches, or shuffle. You know, there's a training method that you see used in some gyms where they tie a piece of string around both of your ankles, and they tell you to move around the ring and not allow the middle of the string to touch the floor. So you have to maintain a tension. Yeah, you have to maintain tension on that piece of string so it doesn't touch the floor. And this teaches you how to keep your legs a specific distance apart. Okay? And it actually builds up the tiny little muscles in your ankles and, you know, various different parts of your legs, which allow you to develop the ability to shuffle backwards and forwards without moving your legs too far apart or too close together. Do you understand? Wilder, with his wide stance, needs to learn how to do that. He needs to develop that ability to be able to shuffle in that wide stance, back and forth. And again, this is something I've done myself, so I know what I'm talking about. I know it can be done. I know it works. To be able to shuffle with the wide stance. And you don't have to stay in a wide stance all the time. You can vary it depending on the situation you're in a particular fight. As Mayweather does. You'll see Mayweather sometimes his stance comes a bit closer. A lot of the time when he's at distance, it's very wide. It's kind of like an anchor. He anchors himself to the canvas in this wide stance and he's like, okay, come get me. You see? So it's very short-sighted of Richie Woodall and many other people to just dismiss a wide stance and say, oh, it's always wrong to have a wide stance. No, it's not. There are many instances where it's very effective. It just depends on the fighter. It depends on the situation. So that's what I'll say about that. And, you know, other than that, that's all they really talk about. It's primarily what stance they're going to fight out of, what tactics both guys are going to use, what their attributes are. They do mention the fact that Tyson Fury's main attribute is frustration. Like well, not his main attribute, but his main tactic is to frustrate, constantly frustrate. And yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. His tactic is to frustrate you, to get under your skin, to clown you, and to dominate you psychologically in the ring. It's very important for Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is not a pure boxer. Do you understand? And what I mean by he's not a pure boxer, he has pure boxing skills, but he doesn't just rely on boxing. He also relies on clowning you, on getting under your skin when you're in the ring, on taunting you. He relies on this. Tyson Fury wants this, particularly if he's in a situation which he thinks is dangerous. He wants to try and establish mental dominance as soon as possible. So in that situation, like you saw against Klitschko, he started clowning him at the earliest opportunity. He wants to establish mental dominance. That's something he likes to do. So we may well see that from Tyson Fury against Deontay Wilder quite early in the fight. If the first round goes okay for Fury, second round goes okay and he's winning, you're going to see some clowning, in my opinion. What else do they talk about here? Obviously Wilder's power. He's tremendously powerful. Wilder, when he fights a tall fighter, he tends to be cautious, and he was cautious against Ortiz. Ortiz is not as tall as he is. But I've mentioned before when he fought Kelvin Price, when he fought Gerald Washington, he was very cautious. He didn't throw much. He had his hands up high, and those guys were hitting his gloves, and Wilder was just waiting for the opportunity to land the big right hand. He was just trying to figure things out and find his range. And when he did, he landed, and those fights were over. Against Johann Duopa, who is a pretty tall guy as well, Duopa was fighting out of a very squared up stance. Duopa's not a guy who fights like a tall guy. He's kind of like a heavyweight Margarito in terms of his style. He comes forward with a high guard, squared up shoulders, doesn't really utilize his reach that well. And because of that, Wilder was a lot more aggressive with him. You know, he let his hands go a lot more because the target was a lot more easy to find. So, but Tyson Fury, obviously, He is a guy who predominantly uses his height and reach very well. And while Tyson Fury is fighting out of that slick boxer mode, I'm expecting Deontay Wilder's punch output to be pretty low. That's what I'm expecting. If Tyson Fury, for whatever reason, decides to do what he did against Steve Cunningham and come forward, hands up high, walk Wilder down, you're going to see Wilder throw a lot of punches. So it all depends on which tactics each man chooses to employ. And both guys are very fiery characters. Both guys have got a very strong will and a strong spirit. And at some point, that's going to manifest in the fight. You know, somebody's going to put their foot down and try and seriously hurt the other guy. At some point, that's going to happen in this fight. Whether they'll be successful or not remains to be seen. And one last point is somebody in my Facebook boxing group left a post, or they wrote a post in which they said that if this fight turns into a shootout between Wilder and Fury, they actually pick Fury to win in a shootout. They think Fury's body weight is going to be too much for Wilder. He'll be too physically strong, and that he'll knock Wilder out if they get into a toe-to-toe punch-up. I completely disagree. These are two heavyweights at the end of the day, and even though Tyson Fury is not noted as a puncher, he's certainly not a prolific puncher, I do believe that if Fury let go on Wilder's chin with his best shot, he could definitely hurt him. He could definitely drop him, in my opinion. But that's not really his game, loading up on shots and trying to hit you with all kinds of power. And when Tyson Fury does do that, when he does start loading up and going for power, he leaves himself very, very vulnerable. And we saw that earlier on in his career when he fought people like Nevin Pajkic. He was trying to load up, he got clipped, and Pajkic is a guy who only had about 4 or 5 KOs out of like 20 fights. And that's what happened when Tyson Fury was trying to trade with somebody. John McDermott, you got to look at those fights. I know it's very early on in Tyson's career and he wasn't really in shape them times. But again, in the McDermott fight and the Pajkic fight, and I think when he fought Nikolai Firthart as well, he was best in those fights when he was boxing at long range. When he was exchanging at mid-range and close range with those guys, that's when he got himself into trouble. Tyson Fury is not an expert at exchanging punches. So if he's having trouble exchanging with people like Pajkic, John McDermott, and more recently Steve Cunningham, these guys are giving him trouble when he's exchanging with them. You're trying to tell me he's going to win an exchange with Deontay Wilder? I'm not saying Tyson Fury's got no chance in an exchange. He does have a chance. When two big men are swinging, it becomes a lottery. Yeah? And there's a chance for either guy to win that lottery. But in a shootout, I give Tyson Fury maybe a 20 or 30% chance. If both guys are just standing in the middle of the ring exchanging punches, I give Tyson about a 20-30% chance of coming out best in that situation. Deontay Wilder is a gunslinger. Deontay Wilder has exchanged punches with many fighters. And when I'm talking about an exchange, I'm talking about when you're both throwing punches at the same time. They call it punching with the opponent. Deontay Wilder has done that against Luis Ortiz. We saw that. He was exchanging shots with Ortiz. Ortiz is letting shots go and Wilder's letting shots go at the same time. And for the most part, Wilder came off best against Luis Ortiz in the exchanges. And many other opponents too. When opponents throw more than one punch against Wilder, when they start throwing 3 or 4 punches, he's going to start punching with you. That's Wilder's instinct. He wants you to open up so he can start opening up. He usually prefers you to open up first, unless he's hurt you. He prefers you to open up first, then he'll join in. And the madness will start. Tyson Fury needs to avoid that. I saw Shane McGuigan also saying this in, I think it was Boxing Social, excuse me. Boxing Social's, one of their most recent videos, where they had little clips of different trainers and fighters giving their opinion on the fight, and Shane McGuigan was saying, as long as Fury doesn't exchange with Wilder, he should be okay. And that's 100% my position on it as well. He has to avoid exchanging with Wilder. Why are you giving the man a chance? If Tyson Fury's got superior boxing skills, you don't want to exchange with this wild man. Because that's the wild man's world. His world is exchanging. And who has managed to clip Wilder in an exchange? Ortiz clipped him, yeah, in one exchange with a right hand. But generally, Wilder comes out on top in exchanges. He wasn't dropped by Steve Cunningham. I know he never fought Cunningham, but I'm telling you, Tyson Fury has a history of having problems in exchanges. He's got a history of it. Whereas Wilder has a history of getting in exchanges and scoring knockouts out of these exchanges. You know, and I'm sure Tyson Fury has as well, but I just feel like Wilder is more experienced and has more success over a longer amount of years when it comes to exchanging with people. He's more comfortable in that scenario, and I think he's more effective. Again, I'm not saying Tyson Fury's got no chance in an exchange. I reckon a 20-30% chance that he could clip Wilder and put him to sleep. But for me, both guys are throwing big bombs at the same time. You know, 3-4 punches each. I'm saying Wilder comes out on top in most situations like that. And with Wilder, his power is so devastating that there might only need to be one situation like that or two situations like that for the fight to be over in Wilder's favor. So yeah, I think in a shootout, it's going to be Wilder all day. Fury has to avoid that, stick to his boxing. And in fact, I think Fury might even be safer walking Wilder down behind a high guard like he did against Cunningham than exchanging. Some people are going to say, oh, that sounds like exchange. No, that's not exchanging. If you're walking a guy down, you can counterpunch on the front foot. You know about counterpunching on the front foot? You can walk a guy down, not throw any shots. He throws a shot, bam, you throw a counter. You can counterpunch on the front foot. Or you can just walk a guy down, he's throwing shots, you're blocking him on your arms. Then when you get very close, then you lead off with a couple shots. Then you put your gloves up again. That's not exchanging. Exchanging is when you're both letting your hands go at the same time. Right? Not when you've got your hands up. You get into a position, okay, he's not throwing now, lead off. Or, you know, you're moving in. He throws a shot, you block it, you counter with a shot. I mean, you could say that kind of thing is an exchange, but my definition of an exchange, for the purposes of this video, is when both guys are in the middle of the ring letting shots go. As you saw many times in Wilder's fight against Ortiz. Both guys were in the middle of the ring letting shots go at the same time at several points in that fight. And in that chaotic type situation, that's often where Wilder lands a lot of his best shots. It's in them chaotic exchanges. So avoid those. Anyway, let me know what you guys felt about this video. Maybe you've got a different take on it than me. But that was my analysis of their analysis. I'm looking forward to the fight. Am I excited? No, I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I don't really get excited for many fights. When you've been watching boxing for as long as me, I guess it depends on your personality too, but when you've been watching boxing as long as me, you don't tend to get that excited anymore. You're more interested than excited. I can't remember the last time I was truly excited for a fight. I mean, Joshua Klitschko, was I really, I wouldn't even say I was excited for that fight. Again, I was very interested. But when I'm talking about excited, I mean, when the bell goes, there's butterflies in your stomach and you're like, you know, your heart's racing. The last time I felt like that for a fight, jeez, long time ago. It was probably a Lennox Lewis fight or a Nigel Benn fight in the 1990s was the last time I really got hyped up for a fight like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And another thing as well is because most times when I'm watching boxing matches, like Wilder Fury, where I don't really care who wins, it does take away from the excitement. Again, I'm interested in the fight, very interested. But in terms of exciting, when you are afraid of one of the fighters losing, fights tend to be more exciting. But when you don't really care who loses or who wins, you just want to see a good fight, then you don't tend to get as nervous or excited for it, So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And I've paid my money. For those of you who are in the UK, if you don't have BT Sport, because I don't have BT Sport, you can buy the fight via the BT Sport website through their official streaming service. So you choose the device, whatever device that you want to use, you can watch it on, whether it's your tablet or your phone or your laptop, whatever the case may be. You can just stream it directly to your device through BT Sport. And that's what I'm choosing to do. No BT subscription needed. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out.
Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.